Okay, other end of the coast. So we were all the way down there, and now we're in Port Douglas. And this is the top end of the coast. So a lot of people come here to stay in the resorts. So in the park at Port Douglas, your referendum failed there, Albo, and you created a criminal offence in attempting to push the referendum on the people, and now the charges are coming your way. Pauline, this was never a joke. Never a joke. And you should understand this now that most of the country has said no to your con job. And it was a con job. You tried to undermine the literal foundations in the Constitution with dream time instead of our faith. That is the foundation of everything that you are in that Parliament, Albo. You've created several criminal offences and possibly a war crime. Now, we need to look at Israel-Palestine conflict, and the Israeli ambassador needs to be kicked out of the country, Pauline. You need to ask him to leave. He is a war criminal. They have gone against the Geneva Conventions in relation to cutting 1 million people off from electricity, food and water. That's a serious and heinous war crime on an international stage. And I'm asking you to throw the ambassador for Israel out of the country. Albo, you lost. Albo, you fucked up big time. Albo, you deserve what's coming. You've created a conflict in this country with your Aboriginal ideologies and tried to use a 1 percentile to undermine the rest of the country while an international conflict was kicking up. And Pauline, make no fucking mistakes anymore, Pauline. This is what I warned you about. Not those Aborigine and those 1 percentiles. This is what's been ripping your country off for the last 20 years. This is what created all the Aboriginal problems in this country by allowing them into the Constitution in the first place in 1967. It's this very ideal that Joe Hockey speaks about when he says we may return to a 1914 style war. Well, you're the Zionist money men in control of the government, aren't you? And this is why we see the Abbott and Costello crowd stand up and complain at the pro-Palestinian crowd in the Albo government. Two factions that are not party to the Constitution, trying to manipulate the administration of that Constitution when a line of authority stood up between all of you and defined itself very clearly on the courtroom record, Pauline. On the very courtroom record, Pauline. So now that you've lost your referendum and Dutton and Liberals seek to find another way to invoice the people for their monetary supply, Dutton will probably attempt to undermine the very Constitution itself yet again. And that would be considered to be a criminal offence, just like Albo has committed. Now, Albo, you will face a courtroom. Albo, you will not get away with all of your war crimes that you've committed very openly on the media in front of everyone. Abbott, Howard, and the rest of you, all on your Zionist adventure, supporting warmongers that don't care about the Geneva Conventions. It's already demonstrative through that cretin David Halpin, fake magistrate of New South Wales, acting on the ABC media. About your Zionism. Oh, those rules haven't applied since the 16th or 17th century, David Halpin says. Is that how long you've occupied for? Is that why we're in a fourth industrial revolution and not a first? Is that because you're under the thumb of some Zionist or papist regime, David Halpin? Is that because you don't hold a line of authority with God, David Halpin, that you get up on the ABC media and act? And we'll go through that video, because not only does he give you answers, he tries to detract from those answers knowingly, because he's a fucking war criminal, Pauline. This man's a fucking war criminal that saw to the drugging of people inside Forensic Mental Health New South Wales, Pauline. Don't think you're going to get away with it, Pauline. This is where we as a people start to put it all down on the table and demonstrate that everything you have done is a crime against the very people here, while you run an administrative government that treats the people here like numbers. Now, I'm holding a camera up and I still have a pain here. Right here, Pauline. I feel like I've been spear tackled, dropped on the neck. That's how I feel. And I'm going to go down to the police station this morning and find out if they've charged this man, who they won't inform me about who he is. So are the Queensland police protecting a known assaulter, a known criminal, Pauline, a known criminal under the criminal code in Queensland, common assault or assault with bodily harm, Pauline? Is that what you're protecting as I go down there this morning and are likely told that I'm not going to be told who this man is? Is this the society that you created? And then when I go down to the doctor, Pauline, I have to pay $98 for 10 minutes. 10 minutes is not enough time for a doctor to touch someone and figure out what's wrong with them. You don't want to touch people anymore. You're pen pushers. And this is where we will stand up against it, Pauline. You continue treating us like this, you're going to find a very stark problem across this entire country, Pauline. It's already happening with your pro-Palestinian protests and your Zionist Jews. It's already happening with your voice and your 1 percentile Aborigine wanting to run the country like they own it, without even any respect for the Anzac that defended them in soldier settlements all up the coast here. Cooktown is a soldier settlement. LR-ish is a soldier settlement. Why are they soldier settlements? It's because the Aborigine couldn't defend jack shit on an international stage, Pauline. And that's why you tried to use them to undermine the Constitution, knowing that they would be totally incapable of defending that Constitution on a world stage, Pauline. And we get to a line of authority at law. Who's going to provide all those Supreme Court justices with a true line of authority in a God and a foundation, in a faith and a Bible, at which they were born from in the first place, at which they hold 150 years worth of common law, Pauline? Who's going to give them that foundation at law? Are you going to do that? No. Isaiah 9:6. You don't have the right to give them that, Pauline. You are born out of it yourselves. So that creation, that right, had to come from somewhere before any of you even existed. And that is found in a king, Pauline, who defined a foundation with God before the Supreme Court of New South Wales, to have Queensland courts recognise that. And if you think the actions of this assault are just going to dwindle away and go under the table, you're sadly mistaken, because my men have pointed out Section 12 of the New South Wales Crimes Act 1900 and Section 109 of the Commonwealth of Australia Constitution, which leads us back to the video that I published, which defined it all at law, Pauline. Defined it all at law. And this is where I have to speak very loudly against all those police officers that believe it's just an opinion. An opinion is something that I believe in that isn't true. What if it's true? It's not my opinion anymore. It's a fact, Pauline, defined on the Supreme Court record. And your police officers need to pull their heads in and realise this fact is no longer an opinion, Pauline. We're going to follow this through all the way now, because you've given the people reason to stand up for their king. You've given the people a reason to stand up for their commonwealth. You've given the people a reason to stand up for their kingdom. And you've given the people a reason, under your voice and all the rest of it, to say no fucking more. We don't want you, your foreign St Edward's crown, running our country anymore, Pauline. We recognise who you are as administrators. We recognise what you're doing between your pro-Palestine and your Israel conflict. We recognise all of it, Pauline. You're in a quandary in that you're supporting Zionist warmongers that have committed heinous international war crimes on an international stage. You let Jews go and annihilate millions of Palestinians and deprive them of food, electricity, water, and the ability to clean that water, Pauline. That is a heinous and serious criminal offence under the Geneva Convention 4. Right? We could look at Hague 4 war on land as well. You're an occupying force in this country that has now committed heinous international criminal offences in Palestine. In Palestine, Pauline. You gave them $144 million, Pauline. You've created a heinous international criminal offence by supporting Israel in Palestine, Pauline. Under the Geneva Conventions, you allow this stuff to occur. And Albo, your voice, you severely fucked that up, didn't you, Albo? You severely fucked that up so hard, the country no longer wants to see your face in Parliament anymore. That's about the sum of it. People want to burn your home down, Albo. That's about the sum of it. You created a conflict in this country over politics for no reason at all, knowing that you'd spent $144 million on Palestinians and Hamas. Isn't that right, Penny Wong? You're the one that enabled this funding of Hamas in Palestine, Penny Wong. And then the Israel conflict of destroying Palestinians and starving them out. Do you think the rest of the world should put up with this as we watch it, and you totally disregard any rules on the table to keep financial and military control merely by dropping bombs? Now, Putin said this, that all of the military arms that you supplied to Ukraine went out the back door to Hamas. That's probably true, isn't it, Albo? Given that you've given $144 million to Hamas through Penny Wong. Through Penny Wong, Albo. And then when the pro-Palestinian protests happened in Sydney, you didn't say a word. And the world said, oh, the Australians, you've embarrassed us. No, you've embarrassed the Zionists who are trying to keep control of Beersheba and El Arish. Now, I'd like you to go and visit a town called El Arish, and I'd like you to go and look at their soldiers' settlement, Albo. And I'd like you to pull your fucking head in. I'd like you to pull your fucking head in so hard and realise that people across this land didn't forget their Australian imperial crown. There's a 1-foot crown on a 2-metre sunrise in El Arish, wherein they polish that sign because they remember they're dead. They remember they're dead. And Pauline, this is where I'm going to make you very, very, very well aware that 70% of Queensland said no to this bullshit. And the reason for it is that sign in El Arish. And the reason for it is because they're all white sugar farmers, Pauline. They ain't black. There is not one black industry in this entire region. There is not one shop serviced by black people except for the Mossman Gorge, where I got assaulted by some lefty Sydney bloke in a tight t-shirt, right? He thought he was better than. That's what you bred in Sydney, better than people. right, Pauline, that go shopping at their Super Cheap and Autobarn and Bunnings and BCFs and concrete mega stores. Concrete mega stores all across the country, because that's what these money men have done to you in that government. The only way you're going to be able to run the country is if you allow us to set up Bunnings in every local town. That's our 15-minute city idea, Pauline. We're going to thrust upon you all these concrete buildings and forget about your Anzac. And we're going to pump you full of Chinese cheap shit like King's products. Right? And then you can go and feel like a king out in the outback while all your shit breaks along the way. We laugh at that sort of stuff up here because you Sydney people are so unprepared for reality that you go and buy the cheapest shit to go and deal with that reality, and then it all breaks on you by the time you get home. And then you can go to work for another year just to save up for another holiday, because that's what these Zionists want out of you. Got to keep you working, Pauline. Don't give you health care. Now, I'm on my way to a doctor this morning to deal with this pain in my neck that your referendum gave me, Pauline. And while I do that, I'm going to get all the documentation, and we're going to charge Albo with Section 80.2 of the Criminal Code. It's that simple. You created a situation of violence in this country over a referendum, and then you led that into an international conflict by not standing up and speaking as Prime Minister in relation to the pro-Palestinian protests or the pro-Israeli bullshit that's going on in this country. You can't stomp on them and tell them they're Australians and to keep that bullshit out of our country. Nope, you allowed it to occur knowing that it was going to create a division, and I wouldn't be surprised if one of your tassel Jews gets assaulted in the next month because of what they've done in Afghanistan, in Palestine, let alone Afghanistan, Iraq. I'm thinking Middle East. Conflicts that you've created over the last 13 years. Which brings us back to 9/11. Who took down the World Trade Center, Pauline? Was it those Zionist Jews? Was it those Zionist Jews that are flattening everybody in Gaza right now without a care for any rule that was ever defined by people together? Would that mean that these Israeli Zionist Jews are just warmongers who don't give a fuck about anybody as long as they maintain monetary control, military control of all peoples? Where does this person slavery come back to, Pauline? What is a person? What is David Halpin talking about while he's pushing his shit all over the ABC continuously? The propaganda machine is pushing hard, isn't it, Pauline? It's fucking disgusting. No, whoa. And you know what I have the opinion of now? Go away, beggar. Go away, beggar. Get out of our fucking street. We don't want beggar Aborigines in our streets as drunks anymore. We want to clean up our towns now, Pauline. They're our towns where our soldiers died to defend our right to be those towns. And you've let this mockery occur over the last 20 years. No more beggars. No more Aboriginal beggars in the streets, Pauline. Clean up the towns, Pauline. Stop feeding them all. Stop giving them all the ability to drink and do all of their shit. Right, you allowed this to occur, Pauline, and now the no's happened. We demand of you time to clean up. And then second to that, we're going to start attacking the state of Queensland because of the crimes that you've created called fraud. Fraud, Pauline, over land titles. Fraud, Pauline, over land titles. So we're going to discuss Aboriginal corporations and how Chinese money men help them through the back door. And we're going to lay out a whole entire map of how Chinese money influences Aboriginal corporations against the rest of the country. Where's the profits from the mining go, Pauline? We discussed profit of Prondra and you thought we were all idiots, Pauline. Well, I'm here to tell you very clearly, we ain't stupid, Pauline. We're going to start looking at the state of Queensland and what you've done to the people's land titles and how you've given away land of the people to a minority population so that Chinese mining companies can get access to land titles through a minority mob that has allowed that access to occur. Chinese money into Aboriginal corporations, Pauline, all across Queensland. All across Queensland, Pauline. Chinese money in Aboriginal corporations at the cost of Queensland, Pauline. At the cost of Queensland. And that's the one thing that we're going to change tack to now, that you've lost your voice in the federal parliament, that we've demonstrated that the House of Representatives and the Senate has no say in this country when the executive branch of government tries to undermine the very Constitution itself by creating a situation of violence over a referendum and the Constitution. That is a criminal offence at law, Pauline, at which all of your House of Representatives and Senate played party to. This makes you criminals at law, Pauline, and if you think this is turning around now, you're sadly fucking mistaken. Sadly fucking mistaken as we start to address the fraud, the actual fraud that has occurred inside those Aboriginal corporations and Albo's government and the Chinese money men behind it all.